Welcome to our webinar about knowledge graph mediated translation for regulated industries. You are most welcome to connect with us on LinkedIn. I think that we have, let's see, I can just chat the I can chat the LinkedIn links of myself and Viveta and Prasad as well. And then you're also welcome to email Viveta directly and myself. If you are hoping to talk to Prasad, then you can also just contact me and then we can find the best time to do that. We do have a poll open, which is available at the bottom of Zoom there. You can click on that and you can click on you can see the discussion questions. A few of you have already filled it out. Thank you very much. But the two questions are: what translation challenges are you currently facing with AI and LLMs? And then secondarily, how important is domain-specific accuracy in your work? So of course, these are important questions to ask. And I think that we can just very briefly just give the word to Prasad, and then we'll also give the word to Viveta once she is able to join us. She's just, I think, restarting and such. So you know how it goes with computers. But Prasad, would you like to introduce yourself briefly before we start getting into the meat of the webinar?
Yeah. Thank you, Edwin. Thank you all for joining us. It's exciting to see so many of you joining in. It appears, I think, folks may be joining from different time zones. I myself am in India, so clearly different time zone than most of you all in Europe. I'm traveling here, so I'm glad I'm able to join. So to start off, my background and my company, I'm founder of the company Lead Semantics. We are partnering with LangOptima with Edwin, and we have created this specification KGMT, which is knowledge graph mediated translation. My company Lead Semantics is it's specialized in knowledge graph creation from unstructured data, particularly. We have a product in this space called TextDistil. It's been in production for a number of years right now. Probably the first version was at the same time as when the first LLMs broke out into the marketplace. At the time, we were a pure NLP, symbolic AI-based NLP. But then with BERT, which is the first version of the LLMs that we are aware of today, we quickly kind of started incorporating LLMs into the pipeline, and so the entire toolkit is a lot more sophisticated to kind of cater to the expectations of the modern AI pipelines. The goal of this TextDistil software is to take unstructured data of any kind. Structured is a subset of unstructured in a way, and produce a highly structured knowledge graph on the other end. And once the knowledge graph is created, it is already adhering to a domain-specific schema, if you will, or metadata. And it's called an ontology. It is now ready to kind of apply for downstream applications. Significant being able to drive LLMs to produce less hallucinating outputs, highly domain-specific outputs with deeper reasoning, and all of those good things. So one of that big application is KGMT, which is the translation mediated by the knowledge graphs. We have seen in our earliest versions to produce high quality outputs even before we ever got into post editing. And so hence there is a promise, and so we got into this entire exercise, and here we are.
Yeah, thank
Back
you,
to you.
Prasad. Yeah, thank you, Viveta. So welcome after a bit of a technical issue there, but
Thank you very much.
we just very briefly got started, and Prasad was just introducing himself. So would you like to introduce yourself also to those who might not be quite as familiar with your with yourself?
Thank you very much. I take it as a lucky sign when technical stuff happen to people talking about technology, it's very common. So we're happy to be with all of you today because we are launching a research partnership with LangOptima and Lead Semantics with Edwin and Prasad. Myself, I'm representing the Ionian University, where I'm actually having now in progress my postdoc research, and it was a very happy I'd say coincidence that we met and we talked about tech and about my previous research on machine translation post editing, and I was introduced into knowledge graphs. So my main interest is with life sciences and fintech. We have these two verticals, these two regulated industries that we're going to work with. A few words about me for those of you who have not run across my profile. So I'm Viveta Gene, and I'm a postdoc researcher at the Ionian University. At the same time, I'm with Intertranslations UK. We are a company based in UK with offices in Athens, Greece, France, and US. And I'm head of global localization in the company. At the GALA, Globalization and Localization Association, as member of the board of directors. And these are a few of the hats, along with being a adjunct professor at the Ionian University. So the interesting part is that either you are a translator or an academic or a professional or any, these attributes, heads in the industry, I can identify myself with you. So this is what we're doing. We're starting our research and we try to identify how knowledge graphs can combine with LLMs, and this can bring valuable assets, especially in the regulated industries. The two use cases and industries that we touch on are dermocosmetics and fintech. So this is for the introduction, Edwin, and we can take it from there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm Edwin Trevels. I'm the founder of LangOptima, and I'm all about like making sure that we're solving problems with the very best solutions, which is either with, of course, human beings, but we also want to use technology where we can, where it can be used responsibly, which is it's also the origin story of how Prasad and I started working with each other last year already. We have been meeting several times a week since last year, I believe. Prasad and I have gotten to know each other quite well. Prasad, has been in the knowledge management field for 30 years and making knowledge graphs for nearly a decade, I believe. Is that correct, Prasad? Is it nearly a decade? 8 years?
Yes, you're right. Yeah, yeah, 8, 9 years. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. So we started working together on this special project to try to tackle this very challenging domain. And while we did that, we developed a formal specification called knowledge graph mediated translation. So I'll just share my screen. Hopefully, you can all see that. And then I just wanted to just lay that out really quickly where we had only 2% of repeated words. So translation memory wasn't that helpful. It was highly abstract. And then we had a lot of domain specific concepts. Model front confirmed for us that only a third was perfect and a third needed light edits approximately, and then a third needed heavy edits, that's partially because it was not a regulated industry, but it was like a self-regulated industry with very rigorous processes in place. So LangOptima, started working with lead semantics and Prasad very diligently. Like he already mentioned TextDistil. This is essentially how that functions, where you start with the source on one side, an unstructured source, but essentially a group of documents. And then through this TextDistil tool that is a mature product, has already been in production for a number of years. It extracts the structure and facts and triples, and then creates the knowledge graph. So it's a very useful tool. And then it outputs a very advanced knowledge graph. We can give a more simple example later on, but essentially this is it. And in the UX, you can actually zoom in and out of these nodes and figure out what the connections are. And it can also then be available for open search. But essentially, we created a workflow, a knowledge graph RAG workflow. So not just a RAG workflow, not just a graph workflow, but a knowledge graph RAG workflow with this tool. And then we also added an add-on with automatic post-editing based on style guides and such. And then we had a massive leap in quality improvement. So with generic neuro-machine translation and glossary management, we were only at 42% with this domain. And then we jumped all the way to 85%. And then with automatic post-editing, we're even at 93, sometimes even 100%, depending on the topic. So it's very high quality for a very challenging domain, which is some 5 times more difficult than most domains. And it touches more on the challenges of regulated industries. So it's a formal specification. It's LLM agnostic, even though that picture has OpenAI on it. It's LLM agnostic. And then we're now exploring further. It's already integrated in Crowdin, and that's what it is. So I just wanted to very quickly set the stage, just to make sure that we understand kind of the background of that. And then maybe I can now pass it on to Viveta to explain the research piece, what she's going to be tackling. Viveta?
Okay, thank you very much. So the innovative part of it, in a way, it is that we try to solve a challenge here, and the translation challenge starts from the the part that this is regulated industry. So we cannot go with word for word. It is more than that. So in life sciences, and in the same goes for fintech. A simple error can be very important, and we know that because of the compliance violations. So if you just use an AI, which is almost impossible to use AI like an LLM for life sciences for many reasons, but if you attempt to do so, then you will find out that these models, and for those of you that are involved, you already know it, they are trained on broad general corpora. So they cannot understand the pharmaceutical documentation, they cannot understand the concept of a term, and this terminology is embedded in a very complex web of regulatory, clinical, and technical contexts. So what we're trying to do here is that we try to work with the regulations, with the knowledge graphs, meaning that we have, for example, the data, we have the information, but when we go up in this pyramid and we have the knowledge, what can we do? Because LLMs can hallucinate and they cannot bring us the results that we would like to do in order to have the linguists being compliant. So in a way, just for you to give you my 360 view and make you understand what I'm doing, I'm trying to turn, in very simple words, the linguists into compliance officers, meaning that they can build together the language part, and they can make sure that the brand goes and gets exported in a safe way in terms of compliance, but they also understand the compliance. And if there is anything regarding compliance that could be in a way faulty, then they can catch this error and it will not go further. So it is like being super assistants and super experts of the regulation departments of the different companies. So now let's say, for example, in dermocosmetics that we have the regulation EC 2024/996. So there we have, for example, that retinol, which is actually the substance that we're going to study as proof of concept for this research, is capped at 0.3%. Now, when we have many ingredients like retinol, etc., this is not something known to the linguist. So in order to be compliant, there needs to be the concept behind, there needs to be the entities, the ontologies, the knowledge graph that will capture all these data of compliance, the specific details of the regulation, and not only in one jurisdiction, but in multiple jurisdictions. So what we try to do is to create a knowledge graph that is going to capture the jurisdiction of EU, the jurisdiction of US, and then the linguist will be able to prompt and get the correct information for the jurisdiction they're interested in for their translation. So this is the broad concept of it. And by doing so, we can help the situation, like having an antidote for the hallucinations and the poison, in quotation marks, of the LLMs. Now, in order to build a knowledge graph, and this comes from my research because we are in the early stages, we need to have a corpus, but don't get the corpus like the normal corpus that we use. This corpus needs to fulfill the requirements of the knowledge graph creation. So we need to have specific brand descriptions from the US, specific brand descriptions from the EU, and we also need to have experts from the specific vertical for a specific industry like dermocosmetics or fintech to make sure that what we are going to prompt is the correct regulation set. And this is how we start. So this is the corpus basis. And taking it from there, we need to find a way to prompt the system. But Adrian, I don't know if you have a specific question or if you would like me to continue with an example of prompt, for example, or if there is anything else that you would like to trigger at this point.
No, I think it's super interesting. I think that maybe I can just mention that this does touch on quite a few of the poll results. Like some of the things that the challenges that people have is the need to customize. It doesn't include, some languages, the difference in LLM resource available for each locale. There's challenges with writing conceptual metaphors for language learning. And then the hallucination is, of course, an issue. So those are some of the results of the poll. If I can just insert those into the conversation. But with that, feel free to carry on.
Okay, so we start just to give you an idea from the theory and research aspect of it, but my way is to put it in very simple words for everyone to understand. So we encode, in a way, the first step, the regulatory logic, and we have entity nodes, we have regulatory relationships, product type nodes, and jurisdiction nodes. The second thing is that we're going to link terminology to regulatory meaning. And for example, in French, we may have retinol, retinil acetate, retinil palmitate, and so on. But the graphs will know that the graph knows that these terms are part of a single regulatory calculation. So it knows how to calculate without contextualizing its relationship to the others and create this compliance risk. The third part is that we create multi-jurisdictional mappings. And for example, we can have a mapping for the UK, a mapping for like other Swiss jurisdiction and so on. So this can be very specific to a territory. And step 4 is to structure for AI integration. At this point, when we reach the AI integration, then we have to ask an LLM in a very effective way. So instead of saying, for example, translate this dermocosmetics compliance document, we need to go with a different prompt and say, translate this dermocosmetics compliance document, use the knowledge graph to ensure All retinoid ingredients are referenced consistently. Percentage limits reflect the regulatory calculation method for the target jurisdiction. Product type restrictions are preserved and flag any ingredients not found in the knowledge graph for human review. So the research outcomes out of this should be that by mid, let's say 2025, we'll have a validated knowledge graph for this vertical for dermocosmetics, and I hope that in parallel we have for fintech, and then a comparative analysis showing how prompt engineering guided by graph structure improves terminology accuracy by X%, for example, versus other LLM systems or without the contribution of the graph or other just, GPTs and LLMs. And then we're going to have practical implementation guidelines showing how the companies of a specific industry like dermocosmetics can adopt knowledge graph mediated translation workflows immediately, and scalable methodology that extends to other regulated substances and product categories. The reason we focus on retinol and dermocosmetics is that these ingredients are discrete and the compliance stakes are real. So the translation volume also is enormous. So we know that LSPs and directly the companies, the direct clients companies and the industries, they suffer from the differences in the jurisdictions and regulations. So this is something that made it important.
Wonderful. Maybe we can give the opportunity to Prasad to explain a little bit how TextDistil and KGMT can help with this. I do have a slide that I can share that has John Travolta mentioned on it, so that should help explain it a little bit to make it a little bit more clear, perhaps to those uninitiated to knowledge graphs. So maybe we can start with how does a knowledge graph work? So just taking a few steps back, or maybe a lot of steps, Prasad, and then move on from there. But I'll share the screen right now to the John Travolta.
Right. While you keep this slide on, I will actually, start off where Viveta left off. She mentioned about how the specific prompting that would help get the exact outputs that you expect in a translation output, and how such a prompt can be properly guided or created by the knowledge graphs. So knowledge graphs help in hyper-specific prompts targeting the focus area that is being guided by the LLMs for translation. So in that sense, every segment or sentence or whatever the patch or a region of text that is being translated will get an appropriate hyper-specific prompt as a result of filling certain blanks in a template by the knowledge graph itself. And so that is what actually guides the entire translation to be as high accuracy as possible that we have seen in the past. So now how does knowledge graph mediated translation produce those templates, and the values that get filled into these templates is the theory of knowledge graphs and the knowledge graph mediated translation. So and maybe at this point it helps to kind of get into what knowledge graphs are, and your slide, if I can go into this. So for example, on the right hand top corner you have this sentence which is Pulp Fiction was released in 1994. The film is in the genre of neo-noir. It plays in the city of Los Angeles and was directed by Quentin Tarantino. The actor John Travolta played the fictional character of Vincent Vega in the film. So this is a plain language, in sentences, and being that it is communicating something, means that it is actually carrying some knowledge. And the knowledge itself is in terms of the concepts that are being relayed in the text, as well as the relationships between these concepts. So concept of a person, for example, or a character, and the character being an actor or a director, and an artifact being a film, and then a characteristic of the film being the genre, and the location being a city. So the location, person, artifact, these are the concepts, and the entities that are of these concepts are the exact instances that we relate to in real life, like Vincent Vega, or John Travolta, and his name, or the character's name is Vincent Vega, and 1994 and Los Angeles. These are the real world entities, if you will, and they have this, the flavor of what they belong to in terms of how we characterize what concepts they belong to and such. And if you follow these links, they will clearly tell you what these instances are, and so you are able to modulate in your mind what exactly you're looking at. So you're talking about a film and an actor and a director and a city and a genre at that level, and then specifically, in the text it is these characters like John Travolta and those things. So now in this is, as you see visually, it's a graph of nodes. These nodes are entities, and entities belong to concepts. And the concept space is a meta level layer. They don't appear in reality. In reality, it's Pulp Fiction, John Travolta, and Los Angeles. Whereas at the conceptual level, there is a city, there is a film, there is an actor. These are all conceptual stuff. There is no real world entity that is an actor, right? Somebody, some physical entity is an actor. The physical entity John Travolta is labeled as an actor. So these are all the different elements. So as simple as this English text breaks down into an equivalent knowledge graph that we see here. And that is the knowledge graph in a way. So once so a large text can be broken down into this type of knowledge graph. So in other words, if you only have this knowledge graph and not the text, you can traverse this knowledge graph to produce the original text in some way, unambiguously so. So because these knowledge graphs are directed nodes and edges, so the relationships are directed. So in other words, Pulp Fiction release date is 1994. It's not, the direction of the arrow is not the opposite direction. It is actually encoding the relationship direction. So in other words, your casual traversal without really planning for anything will produce something very meaningful and might result in part of the text that you originally planned for. So that is the essence of carrying the knowledge. And now knowledge graph mediated translation takes this one step further with a focus on translation. We take the input text based on the domain that we know of. So the equivalent ontology, which is pretty much synonymous with these pink boxes here, the conceptual space that is specific to the domain, and then take all that knowledge, and then we try to reproduce in a target language. Language is independent, actually. Knowledge is independent of language. And so we can use this graph and produce in Greek, for example, the same text as what is in English on the top, which may have been the source language. We could produce it in French. Of course, you can add any additional metadata characteristics that you want to kind of transfer through in the translation process, and that they will all be part of this knowledge graph. So that is the essence of KGMT in a nutshell, if you will.
Yeah, thank you, Prasad. So the power is, of course, when this is combined with the large language model, where it traverses this knowledge graph so powerfully, and the knowledge graph can hold all of this rich metadata, which is very exciting. And so we're really getting into some advanced data management. So, Viveta, you've had some recently some great posts as you are getting into this research. I was just wondering if you wanted to maybe highlight a few possible benefits that you are already anticipating with this
Mhm.
methodology.
Yeah, I think that when we started together, I was just curious, and this is how research starts. But then when I went deeper into the knowledge graphs case and I understood how it can be combined with the translator's work, then now I can tell you what I find really fascinating. That let's say about the workflow, about the translator workflow. For example, post editor sees an LLM translation, and there is a suggestion like acetate of retinol, which is slightly non-standard. Then the knowledge graph interface immediately shows that the standard regulatory term is retinol acetate, and that this ingredient contributes to the combined retinol equivalent cap, and that it must be translated consistently with retinol and retinyl palmitate. Okay, just to give you an idea across all EU market documents. So one click and consistency is ensured, and this means one less revision cycle. Then there is another benefit, not only for the workflow, but also for the translation memory and terminology management, because what is knowledge actually? It is all about terminology. So you can have no more orphaned terminology entries that create inconsistency later. Uh, Another use of it, which is not directly connected to translation, is a more I don't know if it is marketing, but it is product wise benefit, which is about product discoverability. So when your product data is structured through a knowledge graph, where you are creating a semantic markup. The search engines and regulatory databases understand. So this is also important. And these are three kinds of value that we can have. Now, if we go like per audience type, who might be interested in this and what can be the benefits for the audience. Uh, if you if you are coming from academia, uh, this research fills a documented gap because it is the intersection of prompt engineering, knowledge graph mediated translation, and regulatory terminology. And this has not been studied enough so far. So it is an excellent opportunity for the researchers to work in an industry like dermocosmetics, combining all these aspects. Then for regulated industries, it means reduced compliance risk. We already explained this. We mean scalability without quality compromise, because as product portfolios expand, knowledge graphs let you handle volume without proportional increases in review. And then another aspect is better cross-market alignment. So your German, for example, product documentation uses the same regulatory logic as your French version, not just by chance, but by design. And this means semantic consistency. So these are the things that I have elaborated so far, but I think there is more to come soon.
Yeah, thank you for that. Prasad, would you like to add to what Viveta just presented?
Yeah, so the knowledge graphs, one of the there are multiple benefits of knowledge graphs that are independent of translation per se. Once you create a knowledge graph of a certain domain, now this artifact is universal. It can be applied for a number of applications. Significant among them is, of course, in this day and age for servicing data for AI workflows of all kinds. That in and of itself is a very valuable thing, and that reduces the hallucination of the LLMs that are working off of the data that is produced, because the data is of high quality. In knowledge graphs, it's very hard to put disambiguous, data, if you will. because of all the relationships that are entailed once it is in a knowledge graph, it automatically forces that things are beyond a certain threshold in terms of quality. And so that is a huge benefit. And the other one is that these are, once data is in the knowledge graph format, knowledge is what you need for your decisions. So anytime any decision is made, it is because the requisite knowledge is available at the point of decision. So subconsciously, that's what we are doing all the time, no matter whichever decision that you make. Consciously or subconsciously, is one way or another, the requisite knowledge is already serviced to the point of decision making. That's what it is. And now knowledge in a computable format like this is readily available for any algorithm to kind of service that last mile in terms of providing the decision support. In other words, it's a high value knowledge analytics is another. In other words, you are saying business intelligence with knowledge as a component to it, which is a high value outcome. And so that is available. And then knowledge graph is a curated data structure. So it is not like you create from this content one version of a knowledge graph, and and once the application is done, you throw it away. No, I mean, this knowledge graph uh, holds all the value of all the content that it is a proxy of. If anything, this is like the golden reference data, if you will, that continues to curate and add value for all eternity, if you will. And it can be dynamic and keep on accumulating new versions of it, and things of that kind. And the current technology is such that knowledge graphs are built with W3C standards. And so, in other words, built with one tool like TextDistil, for example, you can move to another vendor's tool and probably continue to curate the existing knowledge graphs without any missing a beat. These are the additional benefits, and there are plenty of benefits with these knowledge graphs. Yeah, and
Thank you for
pass it
that.
on back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for that. We're just going to go into breakout rooms for just about 10 minutes. We have this room, so if you feel like you should just stay in this room with me, then you feel free to stay, and then we can just chat for about 10 minutes. But we also have a finance breakout room. So at the bottom, you can of Zoom, you should be able to see a breakout room button with 4 squares. If you are specifically interested in finance, then Prasad will join you there. If you're specifically interested in life science, then Viveta will join you there. And then we're going to bring you back in about 10 minutes. So we're just going to have a more specific conversation for finance, life science, and a general room right here. So feel free to choose your room or stay with me, and then we can just generally speak about it also. I'm just gonna so feel free to go already. But does anyone have a specific question regarding just generally for Prasad or specifically for finance? Feel free to put it in the chat, or you can actually, I'm allowing you to talk as well, so you can just either raise your hand or just unmute yourself. Do you have any questions at this stage? Or is everything clear?
Or the questions can be any other aspect of what you have heard here: knowledge graphs, KGMT, finance. Terminologies.
Yeah, so I mean, in the meantime, while people are thinking, maybe Prasad, you can talk a little bit perhaps about what, the value of knowledge graphs in regards to maybe terminology accuracy. That might be a good one to speak about.
Right. Yeah, I think terminology is a very important artifact by itself, and I guess they also manifest as glossaries in some ways. And these glossaries can be put in so-called shallow knowledge graphs that can, like in a hierarchy of terms, and then with relationships to other, either terms or glossary items. And so you can navigate through the structure in a meaningful way, and then also use this glossary structure to help in the knowledge graph mediation, at the time when an LLM is being prompted with a specific guidance in terms of what metadata it needs to use to do the translation, it can add the appropriate glossary terms as well to the context, and hence increase the specificity of what the LLMs have to work on, and reduce the scope for it to kind of speculate, if you will. Uh, and so that's one of the biggest benefits of structuring all of what we input to these the LLM workflows.
Very good. Oh yeah, Ariana, would you like to?
Yeah.
You feel free to unmute yourself or chat it.
I think that because I use Ariana's, I'm Norma Bailey, by the way. I'm not Ariana. I want to know, because as you were talking, right? I am a terminologist, so I manage terminology. And as you know, we build concept maps in the term basis. Would that be like the basis for going into the knowledge graph later? I mean, I am very interested in knowledge graphs and improving, translation and also accuracy. But
Right. Yeah. One question I would have is your concept, your terminologies, how are they organized right now? I mean, are they just plain lists, or do you have any other
no, they are a
organization?
concept level term basis that we use. I mean, I work for an LSP, so I manage terminology for many, many, many clients. Some of them are very well structured. The ones that are very well structured is because they have internal terminologies, source terminologies that usually manage the target terminology for them. But not everybody is the same, and not everybody categorizes the concepts in the way they should be in different domains, in different products, because things can be different. Metadata many times is lacking, but I am lucky. Some clients actually do well with terminology management.
Right. I mean, this is a classic case. So usually, there is one more layer of work that needs to be done to add another layer of organization to your, terms and terminologies, to bring them into, the idea of an ontology can come in because of the relationships that you're talking about with other concepts maybe, and maybe there are categories that you want to segregate, and so there is a layer of organization that you want to impose in a very systematic way, and so that action has to be done, which is and then that can feed into a knowledge graph. So all the standards and all the structures of what comes with a formal knowledge graph can really help you organize all that. And once it is in that knowledge graph format, then it is pretty much a workflow process for rest of the AI workflows to kind of methodically take advantage of it.
Because I forgot to mention, we do have some kind of metadata in some, in one specific database that I'm thinking of. For instance, the concepts have a field like "do not confuse with," right? And it has a related concept, or related to blah blah blah, or compared with blah blah blah. So.
Right. So, the metadata can directly map to, some of the ways that are part of the standard knowledge organization. But, in the case where there are additional rules that you are talking about, then you would have to introduce a layer of rules.
I see.
And that they have a place within the ontology. And so it will be systematic still, so there may be a little bit of work in terms of how you, move the terminologies into a structured ontologies. And then help the downstream. That's what I think. I mean, we would have to see further what you have.
And also, in your view, right, it would be important to keep like the history of the concept, right? When you have superseded or deprecated terms, would that help? In the case mostly of translation memories, right? That sometimes they're not clean. So maybe those segments could come back into scope or something like that.
Right. So the governance of what version of the ontology kicks in at any in a workflow is it's like the workflow, whatever is the, like, for example, in TextDistil, which is the tool that we kind of do our processing, has a version number of the version of ontology that works on the content that is flowing through. And you switch the versions, then either it says the existing content is dirty, and so you would have to reprocess that, or it kind of makes sure that it's appropriate, and so lets the process take over. So it's a governance outside of the core organization, and it's like whatever the governance rules that fit the situation.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that. The other breakout room is coming back now in a few seconds, so we'll just finish up here. But if anyone has one more question, then feel free to ask it. But also feel free to put any more questions in the chat, and then we can always answer those. But maybe Viveta, do you want to share perhaps if there's something that came up in the breakout room that the rest of us didn't hear, because we all stayed in the other room with Prasad as well. So Viveta.
Okay. So we thought we had in our room, we have people from the translation and localization industry and from academia. So what was of interest was how terminology can improve in a way the LLM. It seems that people understand the concept of knowledge graphs. They find it really interesting. They believe in this research, and we only had time to introduce ourselves and find out the pain on how to leverage the potential of LLM with knowledge graphs. So I think that further discussion in an upcoming webinar or via email is welcomed to talk about it more. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, where we also spoke about terminology. The Red Prasad explained more about that. So what I guess how can this research work help like a product line in life science, Viveta?
Okay, so for example, if we have here people working in these industries, we start with the regulatory environment. So let's say that you are launching across EU markets under EC 2024/996. So what we do is that we map the key ingredients and regulatory constraints into a knowledge graph. Then the post editors use that graph as a reference during the review phase. Translation consistency is assumed to be improved, is something that we're going to study. And we assume that over a quarter, we measure baseline versus improved post-editing time and revision rates, again with the assumption to have a reduction of 30 to 40% in compliance-related revisions. So what we do is that if someone is interested, we provide the graph structure and we train the team. So someone can own the knowledge graph and extend it as the product portfolio grows.
Yeah, thank you. So Prasad, do you want to just touch on the big old question of hallucinations also? Like how does a knowledge graph reduce hallucinations of AI?
Right. Well,
So
I'll start off by saying, what these hallucinations are and why they uh, appear in the first place with LLMs. So LLMs, the entire architecture is based on, predicting, the missing words or tokens that will fill a pattern. So the LLM is looking, has identified a pattern, and in the pattern, it has identified, what's the gap that can, fill, and the entire pattern comes to fruition. So it is just prediction. So prediction, as you know, is probabilistic in the sense that whatever is the highest probability at the time that it is computing makes the case for it. I mean, of course, there are these words that we see like temperature and things like that. So the variability in terms of picking within a choice randomly of some things that are above a threshold. So in other words, it's always prediction. So in other words, it's a pattern detection over observations. So there is nothing underneath. There is no conceptual basis. None of that. It's just a pattern, and pattern happens to be very potent in the sense that these patterns are in the picked up from the language that is manifested across time, across geographies, across everywhere, right? I mean, these LLMs are so vast; they have literally ingested all of the language there is that is in any form. So all patterns that you might find are there that are ingested. Uh, and therein lies there is a little bit of a problem in that so because it is probabilistic, so the same sentence minus one word will have appeared 100 different ways, but that one word was probably replaced with 10 different variations of it, because words are polysemous. Language is, words have multiple meanings, and all meanings are based on context, and context is beyond just a sentence. And so because of that kind, it will never resolve or kind of converge onto that unique label that is probably required to meet your expectation within the context where you are expecting this prediction. And so that is an LLM. And so in its native sense, it is creative in the sense that it is producing all kinds of variations that seemingly are appropriate, which you, as a human, we will never have the bandwidth to kind of go through all those variations, much less we may not have even encountered in our own experience. And it is seemingly plausible, and it is meaningful, and so it is an option, but you would have to really consume it and make sure that it is appropriate to your context. So what is your context? Your context is based on whatever, if it's an enterprise, your enterprise situation, your enterprise transactional situation, with all the entities that define the enterprise transactions, enterprise interactions, things of that kind. So these are concepts within an enterprise, and as such, the relationships between the concepts of the enterprise, and so that forms the knowledge graph. So that is unambiguous, factual, what makes sense every time, all the time within an enterprise situation. So an LLM, when it produces an output that may or may not be correct, if it is automatically verified by an entry within a knowledge graph, then that is where the hallucinating output is corrected by the knowledge graph armor, if you will. Knowledge graph is like the rigorous armor around the creative inner LLM, and together they automatically produce the highly valuable, less hallucinating and domain specific. Knowledge graphs are domain specific, your enterprise specific, and knowledge graphs also have this reasoning ability to be able to generalize over concepts based on understanding. Understanding is all the related concepts that are relevant to a particular situation of focus. And so that is conceptual generalization. LLMs generalize based on observations, so they have to really feel the observations through which to figure out a pattern. So they will never cross the barrier of generating their own labels. Labels are the domain of humans, and which is what knowledge graphs are good for. And so these two, as you can see, are complementary. Uh, and so it is a misnomer that LLMs will automatically produce the knowledge. They may appear to produce knowledge because but you cannot be sure.
Yeah, thank you. That's really insightful. It's very important also for many to hear this message, and I think it's really valuable. So I just wanted to mention a few things since we're nearing the end. We will actually stay on for 15 more minutes to chat with anyone who would like to chat, but feel free to depart as well. But you are welcome to reach out on LinkedIn to us. You see Viveta and my email address If you want to talk to Prasad, then you just email me, and then we can work on that together. Also, there are a few other opportunities. You can also subscribe to updates on research findings. Like if you follow LangOptima, myself, or Viveta. Viveta, has many posts about this as she's going through it. So it's very interesting to follow her posts. There are also there is in theory also opportunities to be a case study partner. So if you are interested in, especially for regulated industries, that's what we're talking about to work on a certain case study together, that would be interesting to collaborate on. We are, interested in theory also talking about working groups if there is interest in that. And then we can also just have more in-depth technical deep dives in this subject after the fact. So we can set up a meeting and talk about TextDistil and a knowledge graph mediated translation and how that works exactly. But you're most welcome to stay on for 50 more minutes. You're also most welcome to depart, and we thank you for being here with us today and participating here and also in the breakout rooms. Viveta?
Thank you very much for being with us, for sharing with us your challenges. And on our end, just to share with you what we discussed in the breakout room. It is like having an LLM, and that it is how to say defective DNA, and you just have a very good vaccine, and you start building all the antisomes to fight the virus of hallucinations. So this is in very simple words, using an analogy, what we are trying to do here. It is very promising. It is tech-oriented. It has great value and applications. If someone is interested in and comes from the regulation part of the story and departments, and they could contribute with their knowledge in my research, I'm open. Feel welcomed, and send me an email to discuss further and how we can collaborate. And thank you very much. I'm open to your emails and discuss anything because this is how things happen and this is how innovation happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Viveta. Prasad, would you like to give some closing comments?
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone joining here. This is an exciting time and exciting area because LLMs have been a rage in the popular mind space, but they are clearly one side of the coin. And if you turn the coin, it is the knowledge, and knowledge now has a computing equivalent. And so when you put two of them together, is a full coin, if you will. I mean, because language is nothing without something to communicate, and what is being communicated is the knowledge, and knowledge has now a computable structure. And so once you have that computable structure, it's only a matter of switching the languages, so for translation and for content generation, for everything, because ultimately your decision making, your everything is depending on what knowledge you have at hand. And so that's where we are. So now this is an exciting juncture, if you will. And world is realizing that LLMs require this other flavor called the meaning, which is we take it for granted. But now it's becoming explicit, and it's part of solutions that we are already working with. TextDistil is a tool that we are working with in this research, and it's available here.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, and thank you to Viveta and Prasad, and thank you again for everybody. But feel free to stick around. We can just open up the floor for some questions and answers.